Welcome in, everybody, to a very special edition of the NFC West Mixtape. I'm Dan Viens from Seahawks Forever. That's Rob Guerrera from the Gold Standard Network. And I say special because this is the first time since we launched this show that we get to talk about playoff football, baby. It is wild card weekend, and there's some good matchups. We'll talk about all of those. But Rob, first, let's look back on a couple of events from last weekend. We can spend about 20 seconds talking about how the Rams took care of business against the Cardinals, but we'll probably spend a little bit more than that talking about that 49er Seahawks game. What was your viewing experience like for that one?
It was just so depressing. I mean, the Seahawks they were like a python. The defense wrapped around the 49ers offense, and they just squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and the Niners could do nothing about it. It was the lowest point total they've scored since Kyle Shanahan's first game as a head coach. I believe it was the fewest yards that they'd ever had in a game under Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. It was a dominating performance by Seattle.
There you go. That's the show today, you guys. that's all I wanted to hear. Yeah, and like I said, I've watched it 3 times in full now, in 3 different ways, and it's remarkable how boring the game was. I mean, once you're not watching it live anymore, it really was. They really just shut down. They took away the things that Kyle Shanahan likes to do. You know, in their history and one that the 49ers have dominated the last 3-4 years, it's been about explosive plays. And there just weren't any of those except save for the one drive. There were a couple of 18, 19-yard pass plays there, Purdy getting them down close, and then the interception by Drake Thomas. Did you ever we talked about before we went live here, and feel free to go down that road again, the 3 key plays in this game that really decided it. But as a 49er fan, did you ever have a moment in the game where you thought, we're going to get this one? We're going to come back and get this one?
I wasn't sure, but I certainly thought if this works out our way here, we got a chance. For example, when that ball pops out of Darnold's hand, that was the first play. I mean, it hits Yetur Gross-Matos in the neck, and somehow he doesn't recover it. I don't understand that. And then later in that same possession, remember, it's a 1-score game at the time. It's 3rd and 17, and the Seahawks have decided we're giving up. We're going to run it. We're going to improve field position. We're going to punt, and our defense is going to stop them again. And look, maybe they would have. I'm not saying that the 49ers were definitely going to score, but you can't give up that run. On 3rd and 17, to give up a first down on a running play, and they cut to John Lynch, and he is all of us in the booth screaming at the top of his lungs, and that's what we all did too. So those were 2 plays, and Seattle goes down to get a field goal to make it a 2-score game. I still thought the Niners could do it. They get the ball back, they drive down the field, and they are going into the end zone, and Brock Purdy throws a pass that, even though it was tipped, hits Christian McCaffrey in both of his palms, and not only does he not catch it and not score a touchdown, it's intercepted as well. And when that ball was intercepted, I thought, it's just not our night tonight.
Yeah, the fumble from Darnold was definitely a here we go again, oh crap moment. As you said, it was the very, very beginning of the second half, and it's one that will be forgotten about over time. And honestly, I did after watching the game live. It was a 1-score game at that point. Would have given them a really short field. 49ers would have taken over at the 23, 24, 25-yard line, something like that. My biggest takeaway from that game is just how you talked about Python. They just suffocated that 49ers offense in a way that we haven't seen. Now, let's look ahead, because this is no easy task to go on the road and play the Eagles in Philadelphia, and an Eagles defense led by Vic Fangio. And there's an interesting history here that I have become educated on this week. The Kyle Shanahan tried to hire Vic Fangio back in 2017, I believe it was. Well, when he got the job, that's how much respect he had for him and his scheme. And in the 4 games, now they haven't met since 2018, oddly enough, if I have these numbers right. That Shanahan hasn't faced a Fangio coached defense since 2018, but he faced them 4 times in those first 2 years. 15 points, 11 points, 9 points, and 6 points. Now, that was a not fully realized 49ers team. There was no Christian McCaffrey on the scene at that point. I don't even think Trent Williams was on the team at that point. Was that pre-Trent Williams too?
Yes, it was.
your concerns about going to Philadelphia now this week in that environment and playing Vic Fangio and that defense, which is causing a lot of problems for teams.
It's a concern, but not because of anything that happened in the past in those games. You mentioned those 4 games. The quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan had in those 4 games were John Beck, RG3, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Nick Mullins. Okay. Slightly different than the quarterback he has now. Yeah. So I want to point that out.
That'll win you some bar bets, that kind of trivia.
Right. And also, don't forget, Jim Schwartz was a guy that had a lot of success against Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle played him this year, and they put up 26 points on the road. So it's not like these trends hold up forever, but it's going to be a challenge. The Eagles can rush the passer just like the Seahawks can. The Eagles can rush the passer with 4 just like the Seahawks can. The Eagles can cover on the outside just like the Seahawks can. So there's a lot of similarities between the two teams, but a big difference, Dan, is on third down. Seattle, as I'm sure you're aware, has the best third down defense in the NFL. The Seahawks defense on third down is 23rd in the NFL. So if there's maybe an opportunity, and don't forget, the 49ers are the best team on third down in the league. So they may have a difference there, and that may be the opportunity that Kyle Shanahan needs to keep the chains moving, to keep the offense out on the field, and to stop the bleeding on offense.
Meanwhile, it's kind of hard to I don't know what to make of this Eagles offense. It's been one that all season long has kind of had stops and starts. Saquon Barkley just hasn't come anywhere close to replicating the year he had last year. They've had a bunch of injuries on their offensive line. Sounds like they might get Lane Johnson back this week. He is back to practice, it sounds like. But this 49er defense that has really been it's really been a detriment to them the last few weeks. Do you try? I was trying to pick my words nicely. Look, they do some things well. I think that the thing that some people are getting twisted about that game against Seattle is that, well, they're just a bad defense. So of course we're going to run it all up and down the field on them. Ran for 180 something yards. They weren't a bad rushing defense. I think they were 5th in the league, 6th in the league coming in, giving up just over 100 yards a game. So they had been stopping the run, and that's something Philadelphia hasn't been able to do. But Jalen Hurts has been up and down. The passing attack just hasn't really been what we're accustomed to seeing the last couple of years. But defensively for the 49ers, do you trust that defense to go on the road and beat the Eagles?
No. No.
That's our show today, too.
They can't rush the passer. They can't defend the ball when it's in the air. They can't really, the rush defense is hit and miss. Sometimes they're good in short yardage. Sometimes they can be good, but it's definitely hit or miss. And they can't tackle. They missed 18 tackles against the Seahawks in week 18. So I don't have confidence in the defense, but I do have confidence in the Eagles offense to continue stopping themselves. One of the hosts on our network, Jason Aponte, called it the prevent offense. The names on the back of the jersey are a lot scarier than the production from Philadelphia so far this year. They're 24th in yards per game. 24th. That's bottom third of the league. They should be better. The talent that they have is tremendous. They're more talented than the 49ers at almost every position, except for maybe tight end. Definitely tight end. That's probably about it. But this is 19 weeks now we're going on. At some point, you got to stop looking at the names of the back of the jersey and look at what they've produced. And what they have produced is the 24th best offense in terms of yards.
It sounds like Trent Williams, Ricky Pearsall, both questionable again this week, whether you're going to see them on Saturday or not. Which one of those players did the 49ers miss more on Saturday?
This is going to sound crazy to say out loud, but I think it's Ricky Pearsall. And that is no slight to Trent Williams at all, who's been tremendous this year. Made the Pro Bowl again. But without Ricky Pearsall, there is nobody in this wide receiving core that can separate against man coverage. Yeah. Nobody. It is not there, and they don't have any speed. Juwan Jennings is a fine player, but he's not running past anybody. Kendrick Bourne is not running past anybody. You look at how defenses play the 49ers, how Seattle played them. Almost everybody is within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage because they're not scared at all that anybody can run past them. So as good as Trent Williams has been, Ricky Pearsall adds something that this offense desperately needs that they don't have. And when he is not there, it's like playing the game on difficult mode for the 49ers.
That's actually what I thought your answer was going to be. There was nobody to challenge them downfield other than George Kittle, and he had his catches, but they were able to kind of keep him contained The thing about watching that Seattle defense, and it took me almost all 18 weeks this year to finally kind of get rid of some old PTSD and accept the fact that they just don't, there's no coverage breaks. They just don't have that odd play where a guy's running wide open and then you find out after the game that somebody made the wrong call or whatever. Like, they're just so assignment sound. It's remarkable. I want to talk more about this 49ers team though, because I still, and then we're going to get on to the Rams. I still fear the 49ers more than I do the Rams right now. And that might seem a little crazy because I had the Rams winning the division at the beginning of the year. I thought going into the week 11 game between the two, they were the best team in the league. I still thought that. Something has happened with that team over the last month or so. I mean, they lose to Carolina, they lose to Atlanta. The Carolina game, it made some sense coming off an emotional, rivalry game like they did. But the Atlanta game made no sense unless it was just that, the carrot wasn't there anymore. They didn't have a chance to win the division. They just came out flat. Something is wrong with that team right now. Even the game on Sunday, they end up winning by 14 or 17, but they were only up 3 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And then Matthew Stafford threw a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter to put it away against a Cardinals team with a lame duck head coach and a lot of guys hurt. And even when they were healthy, they weren't very good. They had no business hanging with that Rams team. What do you make of that team right now and where they are headed into the playoffs?
I agree. It has been a less than impressive showing for the Rams down the stretch of this season. I don't know if they're playing with their food or what, but
I can't put my finger on it.
That Cardinals game, it's the final week of the regular season. You are there against this team that probably knows their head coach is going to be fired. A lot of guys, look, they're in Cancun already, right? You get up a couple scores on them and they're all right, pack it in. Let's just run the clock and get the hell out of here. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, the Niners could be the 5 seed if the Rams mess around here a little bit. So it has not been a great showing for LA. Now, I still think they're really good. I think their defense, as good as it is way more gettable than the Seahawks, if that makes sense. Like, I think you can move the ball on the Rams a little bit. I don't think they can rush the passer, but they don't have the kind of smothering type of defense that I think the Seahawks have. The Rams are very good. They can beat anybody, no question about it. But I also think they can be beat by anybody. And if you look at the teams that they have played this year, that's kind of played itself out, including the team they're going to play this week in Carolina, who they've already lost to.
Yeah. Yeah, I do feel like there's some sense of humbling that's happened with them, the last 4 weeks. I think coming off that week 11 win over Seattle, they kind of felt like they kind of, did what they need to do and the division was theirs. But that's probably something that I should take into account when I consider whether or not I'd be afraid of that team in the playoffs, because usually in his history, Sean McVay gets his team ready to play coming off a bad performance. You usually don't see those in back-to-back weeks. And getting in, all that matters when you get in the tournament is getting hot. And when you look at the Rams and the 49ers, both flawed rosters, every single roster in the league is flawed this year. I think that's why we've had so many great games and so much entertainment and so much parity. Which one of those teams do you think is more likely to get hot?
It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe Seattle, maybe. I'm not sure. Honestly, I think it's styles make fights, to be very, like, even the 49ers. Let's say, for example, the 49ers somehow win this weekend. They may get Trent Williams back. They may get Ricky Pearsall back. They may get Fred Warner back next weekend. What are they? That's a completely different team that plays if they get those guys back. So I don't even know if it's a matter of getting hot necessarily. I think it might be just sometimes the stars have to align, and it depends on who beats who, right? Seattle's a perfect example. If the Niners win, they may play the Niners, which I think is a good matchup for Seattle. But if the Packers beat the Bears, which is very possible, then Seattle may have to play the Packers, which is a different set of challenges. Mm-hmm. So it's just a weird season.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like the answer should be the Rams, because we saw them, that offense was operating at such a high level the first 12, 13 weeks of the year. They can turn it on and off at seemingly any moment. I just can't figure out that defense. I don't know whether to think, I don't know if it's good or not. I mean, I saw them take the ball away 4 times from Sam Darnold in week 11, and I've seen them wreak havoc with pressure against opposing quarterbacks, but they give up big plays. They give up long drives in key moments. And I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it is. The 49ers, meanwhile, you make a great point. If they get Williams and Pearsall back, I feel like Shanahan does such a good job of keeping his energy level steady. He just keeps that ship so steady, where I feel like McVay is wound so tight that sometimes the team kind of grips up and clinches a little bit too. Maybe that's what's going on. I think if any team can turn it around after such a lackluster performance in week 18 and turn it on again in the playoffs, it's the 49ers, because I like that Shanahan mentality. I like how he coaches his team.
I think that McVay realizes what he has. I think he realizes we do have a team that's good enough to win a Super Bowl. I have a quarterback that's good enough to win a Super Bowl. I have a defense that's good enough to win a Super Bowl, but we might not win it. And I don't know what it's going to be going forward. You got to figure out with contracts and who you're going to pay and who you're not going to pay. Matthew Stafford's future, who knows? We don't know how much longer he's going to play. We have no idea. Let's not forget, the Rams would not, at one point this offseason, it wasn't totally sure that they wanted Matthew Stafford back. There was a lot of contractual stuff that they had to work out.
He could have gone to Vegas if he wanted to.
So, we don't know. The future for the Rams is very much up in the air. So I feel like they have a vibe of, we have to get it done this year. Like they feel that pressure. Whereas Seattle, they're very early. The oven is not even preheated yet on Seattle. Now, they're going to have to figure some things out contractually as well, but I feel like they are much earlier in their team building process because of the age of the quarterback than the Rams are. Same thing with the 49ers. The 49ers are leading the league in dead cap money. They got everybody injured. This is house money for the 49ers. If they don't win it, okay. But if this is not a Super Bowl or bust year for them, I think the Rams do feel that pressure.
Does Robert Saleh get one of these head coaching jobs this offseason? Do you expect that?
He better. A quarter of the team needs a new head coach. Now there's 8 teams because Mike McDaniel was just fired. 8 teams that need a new head coach. Robert Saleh just got a new agent. I don't think that was an accident, by the way. You're telling me that a quarter of the league and no one's going to hire Robert Saleh? He clearly wants to leave. Like he wants to be a head coach. I don't necessarily he wants to leave, but he wants to be a head coach. Sure. And so I think his mentality is going to be, I'm leaving here with something. Like, one of these jobs is going to be mine. A lot of people in Tennessee seem to think that maybe he would be a front runner there. If I was Robert Saleh, I would pick up my phone. I would dial up my old buddy, my old coworker, Mike McDaniel. I say, hey, Mike, come with me. Let's go to Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and let's kick ass in a division that is very winnable. Wow. Right? That's what I would, if I was Robert Saleh, I would try to tag team with Mike McDaniel and I would be calling Baltimore and saying, hire me right now.
That's a really cool idea. And it's an ownership group that has shown patience and support for their head coach, certainly. And it wouldn't be anything like what he experienced with the Jets and an outstanding front office. They draft as well as anyone year in, year out. They manage their cap well, all of that. That's a pretty fascinating idea. Were you surprised that the Cardinals did go ahead and make the move with Jonathan Gannon? Because there were some indication all the way up until game time, even on Sunday, that he was going to survive.
I'm not surprised. Like, they did not win. And not only did they not win, they didn't look like they were even on the right track. It looked like things were getting worse, right? And now you've got the fact that Kyler Murray is pretty much done there. You've seemingly moved on from him. Do you really want to let Jonathan Gannon pick sort of the next era of Cardinals football? He's 15-36 in 3 seasons as the head coach. It's been a full calendar year since the team's last division win, as well as their last win over a team over 500. Like, 14 defeats for Arizona. Worst year they've ever had. 0-6 in the NFC West. 9 straight losses. Like, where is the light at the end of the tunnel with Jonathan Gannon? I just don't see it. And good luck trying to hire a head coach, Arizona. Your ownership is crappy. Your facilities they stink. I know they're trying to improve them, but they're always rated at the bottom of that NFLPA survey. And oh, by the way, you've got to coach 2 games a year against Mike Macdonald, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay. That is the toughest spot to be in for a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see who ends up landing there. There's, some people, for those reasons you spelled out, have speculated that maybe Clint Kubiak would be a strong candidate there because he's not one of the, in my opinion, been pretty outspoken about this. There's a personality component that I think is lacking there. And I think it's too soon. I think he really, to be the candidate that I think he could be, he needs to put 2 years together in the same organization and show some growth in that offense. But people have said, well, maybe that's why Arizona's a good match for him, right? Because maybe it is a little premature. I think he's smarter than that. I think he's smarter than to go to an organization like that. He knows how good the setup is for him in Seattle right now. He can kind of, if he doesn't feel like this is the right cycle for him, he can wait and try and pounce another year. I understand that these opportunities don't always come along and you can't assume that they will. Everybody thought Bobby Slowick was, fast-tracked for a head coaching job after the first year that he had with CJ Stroud in Houston. And then he gets fired as OC the next year. But also, does he want to go to Arizona and get his ass beat 6 times a year within the division? That's probably not a great recipe there. Well, let's talk about the rest of the conference. You mentioned the Packers and Bears game. I'm fascinated by this one. I have my thoughts on the game, but who do you like in this one?
This is so hard to call because, first of all, I think the teams are pretty even. The Micah Parsons absence obviously is huge. They split this year when they played. And it's a division game, which division games are always weird and wonky and more difficult than any other game to predict. It may come down to the last possession. Do we know for sure that Jordan Love is going to play in this game?
I'm looking at it as we speak. He's got to get through the protocol, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Jordan Love.
And Malik Willis was questionable earlier in the week too. If Jordan Love plays, I've got Green Bay in this game. I would trust him more than Caleb Williams making his first playoff start. I think there's obviously some issues defensively. They haven't been the same since Micah Parsons got hurt, but I just feel like kudos to Ben Johnson and what he did with that Bears team this year. Huge. He's got him pointed in the right direction. I think he's getting the most out of Caleb Williams, and I think if they fix some things on defense there, they could be a real problem in that division for quite some time. But they haven't been there yet, and I wouldn't trust Caleb Williams in a game like that if Jordan Love's is able to go. Even if Malik Willis is. Malik Willis is one of my biggest misses when it comes to scouting. I did not think I saw an NFL quarterback there, and I studied him pretty heavily coming out that year because if you recall, that was the year after the Seahawks traded, or it was the year they traded Russell Wilson. So they had that 5th pick. They had the 5th and 20th pick that year in the draft, and there were mock drafts early in the process that had Malik Willis going 5th to Seattle in that draft. Thank goodness he didn't. But and then in Tennessee, whenever he got his opportunities, he didn't show a thing. It just goes to show you, good coaching, stable organization. All these teams that are firing coaches are the same teams that have been firing coaches over the last 10 years. It's why these teams stay bad.
So it looks like Jordan Love has cleared the concussion protocol. He was the backup quarterback last week, so I would assume that he'll be there and ready to go for the Packers. I will say this. If the Packers lose, I would not be shocked if they made a coaching change and John Harbaugh potentially was a candidate there. Having a guy like John Harbaugh out there changes everything for the coaches. And I think there's a reason why you've seen Harbaugh put out that he's not going to do any interviews this week. I think he wants to see if there's some coaching changes after Wild Card Weekend as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you'd like to take over a playoff team if you're a coach rather than having to start from scratch. I would not be surprised if Matt LaFleur was on very dangerous ground, especially if somehow the Bears come out and just roll over the Packers defense with no Micah Parsons.
There's been buzz about that and in that direction throughout much of the year. There have been no contract talks in extending him. I was just reading yesterday about how that might be a financial issue. The Packers just might not want to go to where LaFleur is going to be able to demand as far as an annual salary. Earlier in this season, about mid-season, Diana Rossini reported at one point that there was a current sitting head coach that might be available in trade this offseason. And I always assumed that might have been Matt LaFleur also. So you might be right. And I think it is interesting to see that that's the approach that Harbaugh is taking, because there's some indication too, or some speculation anyway, that if the Bills flame out this weekend, that Sean McDermott might be out in Buffalo, and a chance to coach Josh Allen and move into a new stadium and all the things that come along with that. There's a lot of really intriguing jobs out there, or that could potentially still be out there. Isn't it nice to be in a division and to cover teams that have some stability? It's not a coincidence. It's that these three teams are as good as they are because they just do it the right way. When are these bad teams ever going to learn?
It is really weird that now Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay are like the old heads when it comes to coaching, right? I think other than Mike Tomlin, Andy Reid, and I think that's it in terms of people that have been with their current team longer. Like, they're the old dudes in the room. Now, neither one is old now, but they're like the long in the tooth members of the coaching fraternity.
Let's see what we got going in the comments. Thanks for being here, you guys. Really appreciate it on a January afternoon. I figured we'd get this question at some point. How is Rob an M's fan and a 49ers fan? What say you, Rob?
I'm a masochist is the answer to that question. Could I have picked just more pain as a sports fan this past baseball season being a perfect indication of that? But it's the life I've chosen.
You mentioned this earlier. Howdy 49er says that the 3rd and 17 conversion was the backbreaker for the Niners. One of the stats of the year, there have been 4 conversions in the entire league this year, successful 3rd down conversions running the football on 3rd and 15 or more, and the Seahawks have all 4 of those.
Yeah, great for them.
And they've all happened in the last, one of them was the touchdown against Pittsburgh. It was 3rd and goal from like the 18, but the other 3 have happened in the last 3 weeks.
Awesome.
You want me to talk about it some more? By the way, happy anniversary to everyone. Happy 15th anniversary of the Beastquake run. This was 15 years ago today when the 7-9 Seahawks, who made the playoffs because they won the division, we've seen that this year in the NFC South, beat the New Orleans Saints in the wild card round. So just a good reminder that anything can happen in this round. Are you listening, Carolina Panthers?
Right. Like that. And that's what I keep telling Niner fans too, because there were a lot of depressed Niner fans after that game, and I get it. But when the playoffs start, the season begins anew. We have seen crazy stuff happen in the playoffs. The Niners won a playoff game against the number 1 seed in Green Bay where they didn't score an offensive touchdown because they blocked a punt and returned it for a touchdown. Like, craziness happens in the playoffs. You just got to let them kick the ball off and then see what happens in the next 60 minutes.
There usually aren't as many possessions. Turnovers play a bigger role. Calls play a bigger role. Yeah. Anything can happen, and one thing can turn a game around. Absolutely. There's just the emotional intensity of the playoffs is just, we don't see it during the regular season. Chosen 1494 says, let's be honest, the Niners have no chance with the linebackers on the roster at the moment. That is a huge issue. They lost D Winters and the guy who came in for him, and now I'm blanking on Bethune. Yeah, Tatum Bethune. Lost him as well. Had to sign a guy off the street this week. That's got to be a concern, obviously, especially anytime you go up against a mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts.
Every 49ers linebacker that made the initial 53-man roster is hurt right now. That's not an exaggeration. That is a statement of fact. They signed Kazir White, and they're like, yeah, we probably have to play him this week. Like, they're signing guys off the street to play in the wild card round. And then there's 49er fans that are like, yeah, these guys stink. It's like, yeah, linebackers 5 and 6 usually do stink. That's why they were 5 and 6.
Yeah, at least, they had a guy like White available at this point in the season. That's pretty unusual. A veteran like him, and Eric Kendricks has, had a good career at one point. It's crazier things have happened. Chosen says Eagles are going to run all day with their offensive line. That offensive line has not been the same this year.
Right.
It's not the Eagles offensive line that we've seen. Look at Saquon Barkley's numbers this year compared to last year. They haven't been automatic running the football this year. My
question to Chosen would be, why haven't they done it? What are they waiting for? Like, they haven't done it all year. They just haven't. And they should. I agree. Like, it seems like they should be able to, but for whatever reason they haven't. Now, maybe that changes this weekend. Like we said, anything can happen, but If you're a Niner fan, like, you just have to look at what has actually been produced and then make your judgments based off of that.
Indeed. Someone's calling you out. So I'm just going to give a little equal time and throw this in here. Divine Comedy says, I need stats to comment on how he feels about his take that Seattle's defense was stat padding versus bad offenses. I didn't see that take, but apparently.
Well, I never said the word stat padding, but I did point out that it's not as if the Seahawks have played a murderer's row of quarterbacks. They haven't. The fact that they dominated the 49ers doesn't change who they've played on the schedule this year. But as I said that night and many times since then, the Seahawks kicked the ass of the 49ers. They dominated them in that game. There is no other way to look at it. It was a putrid performance by San Francisco offensively, and the reason is because Seattle kicked their ass. The Niners were going max protect. They were only running a few guys out in pass plays because they were trying to buy Brock Purdy more time. He didn't get any more time, and because there were so few guys out there, there was nowhere for Brock Purdy to go with the ball. Masterclass by the Seahawks, no question about it. But that also doesn't change who they've played. Two things can be true.
And yet, by the time we get to the end of the season, the fluidity of the schedule as it wanes, ended up kind of the pendulum swung all the way back in the other direction, and the Seahawks end up with the best record against winning teams of any team in the playoffs. They went 6-2 against winning teams, and there was a point in the season when that was the big criticism of the Seahawks is, well, they haven't beaten anybody yet. So
there's a super chat that basically agrees with you, Dan.
Jamal Fair 5790. Thanks for the dono. Really appreciate that. Very soft schedule. Oh wait, 6 wins versus playoff teams. There you go. Took the words right out of my mouth or hands. I kind of like this, actually.
I don't know what Seattle fans are so.
Howdy 49er says so much parody this year. He spelled it wrong, but I think it's kind of funnier that because at times, depending on which game you're watching at any given point, there could be parody. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry about that.
No, I think it's funny. I've had a Seattle fans in my mentions all week because I said that the Seahawks-Niners game swung wildly on 3 plays. I also said the Seahawks dominated that, but apparently that is not good enough for Seahawks fans. Somehow that is me being a homer or a jerk. Like, you don't need any extra credit for the win. Like, you won. You held the 49ers to 3 points. It was a dominating win.
Fans always want that extra credit. They always want that.
Let me ask you this.
Just to win the game. They want to hear it.
Let me ask you this, Dan. The Seahawks have played the 49ers twice so far this season, once with a defense as broken as you can possibly be, and they have only scored 2 touchdowns combined in those games. Does that worry you? Not specifically about the 49ers, about the offense in general.
No, because I think that's kind of who we knew they were, they're not quite dominant enough up front to be able to cash in some of those opportunities. I think that's the reason they didn't run it from the one on that first drive which is still beyond me. I think that's a case of Kubiak getting a little too cute. To be the team they want to be, you gotta run that in from the one. We've been saying that for 10 years in Seattle. Sorry, open wound. But the fact that they're running the football effectively now and that they're moving the football right now, no, not worried. I think the defense is good enough that the offense can do just good enough to beat any team that's left in the playoffs. They have to show up and play well, obviously, and you got to cash in those opportunities and take care of the football. All that stuff. Chosen is looking ahead to next year. Man, I just wish the Niners would focus on building this defense instead of drafting all the wide receivers and running backs that aren't even on the field. We've lost our identity. I've said this to you. I've been really surprised. They found a good one in Dominic Pooney last year in the third round, but they've ignored the tackle position in the last couple of drafts. And last year in particular, the 2024 draft was a very, very good tackle year. Now we're seeing Trent Williams get hurt. First ever hamstring injury, might not be able to go. I mean, it does feel like that's what this team needs to do, is focus on both trenches.
This is the frustrating thing for the 49ers, is that they're on record as saying essentially, if it comes down to an offensive lineman that we think could be okay, that, basically just fills a need for us more than anything else, or a skill position player that we think could be really special, we're taking the skill position player and we'll figure it out with the offensive line later. So that is sort of what they have done. The problem is they haven't played any of the guys that they've drafted, or the guys that they have played have stunk. So they're not getting those special skill position players, and they're not addressing the offensive line. So you get nothing out of the deal. And that's been the frustrating thing. Jordan Watkins, for a wide receiver for the 49ers, has barely played this year, a rookie. Jordan James, a rookie running back, hasn't touched the ball on a single offensive play this year. So you're taking these draft picks and you're essentially setting them on fire. And then what we're going to hear next year is, well, you got to be patient with Jordan James because this is basically his rookie year. Yeah, because you didn't play him at all this year. So that is where there's a lot of frustration, and I completely understand it from 49ers fans, because when is the next wave? There's only so many years where you could squeeze more juice out of Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and sort of the old guard. You need the cavalry to come in here. And you've got Brock Purdy, who's only 26. That's great. Ricky Pearsall, I think, can absolutely be part of that, assuming he doesn't get hurt next year again. But there's nothing else beyond that. And there needs to be now.
Well, the good news, according to Leon Sandcastle, he says he loves this O-line class, incredibly deep, specifically with many players that fit the athletic scheme requirements for the offense. That's interesting because it's not what I've heard about this class. I just started diving into it last week, but I'm focusing on defense first. But what I say about every year's draft class is try to ignore the people that say it's a good class or a bad class. It's all about what Leon is talking about here. It's finding fit, finding your guy at certain points of the draft that fit you and are what you're looking for.
I'm not doing it, Dan. I'm not looking ahead to draft prep yet. We got months to do that stuff. I've been telling people, please enjoy this while it's here. For what is it, 20, I don't know, however many teams that aren't in the playoffs, all but 17 or 14 teams, the offseason is here. They're doing draft prep. They're doing look-ahead stuff. We got real football that's left, damn it.
I am farther behind on draft prep than I usually am at this time because I have a team still playing, and that does make a big difference. What do you think the chances are that Trent Williams decides to retire at the end of this one?
Well, he's on record as saying when they beat the Bears, he was on with Scott Van Pelt, and the crowd at Levi's was chanting 1 more year. And he's at the desk, and Van Pelt says, what about this crowd? And he says, I'm nowhere near done. He says, I'm definitely coming back. Now, I think a lot of that was due to contract, because his contract's going to have to be reworked just because of the high cap hit and all that stuff. And I think he knows that, and he wants to get another contract. But, I mean, to hear Trent tell it, he's going to play again.
To the point we just made, Jamal Fair, thanks for the donation, says the Hawks have a week off for draft prep. And then this one, I think, comes from your side. Joseph Ernberg says Niner fans love to settle for mediocrity, and it's crazy. I'm not quite sure what that means. What does that mean to you?
It means that Joseph thinks he's a higher class of fan because he thinks if you don't win the Super Bowl every year, that everything is a complete failure, and that somehow makes him a better fan or more discerning fan than the rest of us who can acknowledge that you're not realistically competing for a Super Bowl every year and that you can still have a successful year if you do other things and circumstances change that. That's fine. I'm not going to tell anybody how to fan, but I will just say Joseph's going to be pretty miserable most of the time. And I don't want football is my job, yes, because of what I do, but it's also something that I would do regardless of what my occupation was. And I don't want to be miserable all the time. I'm sorry. I just don't. I would rather try to find some joy out of this and get something out of it than to just be mad all the time because if you don't win a Super Bowl, that nothing good matters, nothing good has happened. That's just not how I want to be.
Yeah, I have the same mindset. The NFL is a hard league to win in. It really is. It's being run by really smart people who are really motivated to win. And I just think that's a tough emotional place to be in as a fan if you're going to decide that anything less than the Super Bowl is acceptable because you're just going to be frustrated. You're just going to be angry all the time. Micah Montgomery chipping in with Shanahan's a great coach, great offensive mind for sure, but the 49ers need a mini rebuild. Isn't that kind of what this year was? I mean, this was the year that they reset the cap, let some guys walk, cut down on their cash spending, take the dead cap hits, draft a bunch of young guys on defense with the intention of playing them. And then, of course, Michael Williams gets hurt and some other injuries as well. This was kind of the soft reset year, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And they were not shy about telling people that. that this is what this year was setting up as. It's a reason they weren't more aggressive at the trade deadline. Now, they still added Keon White and they added Cleveland Farrell, so it's not like they did nothing, even though they didn't actually do that on trade deadline day. But if this was a different year, I think you would have seen them be more aggressive for a Trey Hendrickson or maybe a Max Crosby. I can't remember if he was hurt at the time or not. But I think they would have been willing to kind of push their chips in the middle of the table like they have been in recent years when they, really felt like they had a chance at the Super Bowl. I didn't think they thought that they would be able to go on this kind of a run. And so they wanted to save their draft picks because I think they are positioning 2026 as we're back. We've done the transition. We're through that now. And now we're back and ready to make another push. And so that's why, this is house money for this year.
Speaking of the draft, I'm sure things haven't really worked out the way the Rams were hoping when they got that second first-round pick. You talked earlier about the transition we're going to see at some point when Stafford no longer is able to or wants to play. And I would think just the way that Les Snead operates and the way that Sean McVay thinks that we might see a Green Bay-type plan there where they get their quarterback before Stafford's done. But when they made that move and picked up that second first-round pick, the projected quarterback class in this draft was a whole lot different than it ended up looking now. And they're just not going to get a shot at anybody. And I don't think there's anyone worth taking a shot at.
Did you see what Joe Burrow posted?
No.
So he posted on Instagram about how challenging this year was. And the song that he put with it was The Good Life by Kanye West. And you have to pick the section of the song that you want to go with your post. And the section of the song that Joe Burrow picked is when he says, it feels like LA. It feels like Atlanta. It feels like New York. And a lot of people are like, is he talking about potentially getting traded to maybe those teams this offseason? And I'm sitting there like, for the love of God, don't let it be LA. Les Snead with extra draft picks to work with is a very bad man.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the same division as Sean McVay and Joe Burrow together. That's for damn sure. Although I don't. Would it be any different than Stafford playing at a high level?
Yeah, but Joe Burrow's so much younger.
I know. It would extend it. It would most definitely eliminate the possibility of them drafting the wrong guy.
Yes.
Let's see what else we got here.
The chat very active today.
It is.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for being here in the afternoon, guys.
Orion Jones said Stafford needs his Avengers. Well done.
I like it.
Can we talk about the Cardinals for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to mention, I thought when I heard the news today, right before we went live about Mike McDaniel, my first kind of crazy thought that entered my head was, are the Cardinals really dead set on moving on from Kyler Murray? Because if they kept him, that kind of feels like someone Mike McDaniel could succeed with.
Be an interesting thought. They have to decide what they want to do at quarterback. Do they say we were better served with another year of Kyler Murray and using a top draft pick on somewhere other than quarterback, and maybe Mike McDaniel can revive Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit, and maybe that's the avenue they decide to go.
Yeah.
I do think, knowing a little bit about Mike McDaniel, I think he would kind of like the idea of competing against Kyle Shanahan twice a year. I think Mike McDaniel, the word he used when talking about his time with the 49ers was exploited. He feels like he didn't get enough credit for a lot of the things that happened in those early years with the 49ers because Kyle Shanahan got all the credit. I think maybe part of him would like the opportunity to let me go play against this guy twice a year, and then maybe I'll get some of that praise and people will realize that I was a bigger part of that. That's just me putting my own stuff on it. But I've taken a lot of time to learn about those years and their relationship and that type of thing. Be fascinating if you added his mind to the mix in the NFC South.
I was bummed that they fired Jonathan Gannon. I thought we'd get another easy year out of the Cardinals. But again, as you pointed out so well earlier, they're not going to be able to, they're not going to be in the running for a Stefanski. They're not going to be in the running for a Harbaugh or even maybe a Mike McCarthy. Like they're going to have to take someone. They're going to have to take a chance on someone because it's just not a desirable place to go.
I wouldn't. I mean, the weather's nice. There's that.
Here's a good one from Ryan Jones. Says, bring back Cliff. He's unemployed. He's looking for work.
How is he like a candidate that's out there? Like, really? What did you not see from Cliff Kingsbury that you think is left there to unlock?
And you know what's so weird about that too? There's got to be something about the hiring process down there in Arizona, because I always felt like Cliff had sort of this off-putting personality. And what I mean by that, it's like when you see scenes of him in the locker room trying to get his team pumped up, those moments where you see the good coaches thrive, it just felt awkward. It felt fake and kind of forced with him. And my goodness, then they go hire Jonathan Gannon. He's like, hold my beer. I'll make it more awkward. Like from the first moment he arrived, you know, there was that scene where he's greeting players. It just, he seemed like a guy that was trying to be hip and trying to fit in with his players. And then even up until the day he got fired, some of the weird crap that he was saying about the sun rising in the West again, it was almost like he was trying to convince himself.
Some guys have the ability to command the room and some guys don't. Now, I fully admit that there are some people that are awkward in front of a camera. I think Kyle Shanahan sometimes is a little awkward in front of a camera, but I just never got the vibes from Jonathan Gannon. I think of who was Ben McAdoo, was another guy with the Giants years ago. I don't know. You just don't get a good feeling from some people. Now, I should say, I got a bad feeling from Liam Cohen, and that has absolutely worked out in Jacksonville. So, but these hunches that I have are not always correct.
Buddy of mine lives in the Phoenix area, and he's in an industry where he meets a lot of people in the sports industry, and he has some connections with some front office guys in Arizona. And it just sounds like that whole thing's a mess down there. Like there's no leadership and there's no direction. Just throwing darts at a dartboard. And now, so you fire Jonathan Gannon, but you keep your GM. Well, that's the same GM who hasn't been able to improve the roster over the last 3 years. You know, his first year, it looked like he knew what he was doing. He's moving and grooving. He's moving up the board and looking really adept at managing the draft. But the results are what the results are. And 3 wins isn't going to cut it. Now you're letting that guy choose your coach. I don't know. He's not very good at choosing players.
You get into a weird cycle where, okay, you're going to hire the new coach, and then a couple years later, maybe it doesn't work out. So then you want to fire the GM, but the new GM is going to want to bring in their guy, a head coach. So then do you fire the head? You get into a weird cycle. You got to do it all at the same time. Get rid of your coach, get rid of your GM, do a new era, bring in 2 guys together that are on the same page, that are pulling in the right direction. Now, it may not work out, but very rarely do you see a coach and a GM that were not tied at the hip when they came in where it works out, especially for, in the long term. It's almost unprecedented in NFL history.
Yeah, and we're seeing it everywhere. John Spytek, 1 year on the job, terrible draft. Now he gets to, keep his job. Pete Carroll gets fired. He's now involved in selecting the new coach, or maybe he's not. Maybe it's just all Tom Brady. Who knows what's going on down there? Yeah, I'm just watching the chat. They're mostly arguing with each other, so not a lot to throw in there right now. The other aspect to this, all these head coaching firings, is kind of the trickle down effect it has on the rest of the league, because now all of a sudden all this talent is out there on the open market. Jonathan Gannon was a bad head coach. He's a pretty good defensive coordinator. He's an option for someone. I mean, could he be an option in San Francisco even when Robert Saleh moves on? I mean, the carousel extends beyond head coaches, and sometimes those moves are just as impactful.
And I think that people are like, oh, Jonathan Gannon, who cares? No, they are different jobs. Head coach and coordinator are different jobs. Head coach is a management position. Coordinator is about being in a dark room, breaking down film, and coming up with a game plan. So do not look at a guy that was a failed head coach and say, who cares if he moves to this team or joins my team? No. Do not make that mistake. Those are 2 very different positions. And that's why I do think Robert Saleh is going to get a job somewhere. But this might not be the worst year to lose him, because there's a lot of talent. Like, if the Niners hire Jim Schwartz, I would love that. If you're losing Robert Saleh, that's a bummer. But you bring in a crazy psycho like Jim Schwartz and let him run a defense with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and, Michael Williams when he gets back. I would love to see that. So there are options out there. Gus Bradley's already on the staff. Kyle loves Raheem Morris. He's one of Raheem Morris's closest friends in the coaching community. He's a potential option for defensive coordinator. No stranger to the NFC West also, by the way. Sure. So there is definitely going to be good candidates out there. And you're right. Like, these head coaches or former head coaches Mike McDaniel is another example of a guy that could have a massive impact next year. It is important.
Well, and don't assume that these guys are going to stay out of work for long. This is not a good coaching pool this year. Raheem Morris already has 2 or 3 interviews lined up. It sounds like he might just turn around and get another head coaching job. I thought that was a questionable decision too. I think the Browns are just flat out stupid for firing Kevin Stefanski. When you look at the quarterback situation there, and you talk about leaving the GM in charge, the guy who set that whole stage, I thought Stefanski did everything he could to try to get the most out of that roster. And I think in Atlanta, I don't think 2 years was enough to give Raheem Morris when you just finally gave him some pieces to work with on defense for the first time in years, after years of trying to get some edge rushers down there, but they're really young. And then they had the quarterback get hurt, and Kirk Cousins had to come back out at the age of 37. I just don't know what these owners are thinking, man.
And they won 5 out of their last 7 games this year. Like Atlanta showed some fight down the stretch of the season, but a lot of times these head coaching searches begin way before they begin publicly. And sometimes these owners get word behind the scenes of somebody that might be available that they want. And a lot of stuff happens that doesn't reach the light of day. And so sometimes your fate is sort of sealed even before things have played out on the field.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation that that's why the Dolphins moved on from McDaniel today, that they were one of those teams that came out as soon as Harbaugh was fired, that the number of teams that called his agent right away exceeded the number of teams that had an opening at the head coaching position. There is some speculation that Miami might have been one of those teams, and that'll be the move. Before we wrap this thing up, got any questions for me?
Well, you don't play this week, so you just get to sit back, watch all the other teams beat themselves to hell, and then you're just like, all right, who's coming to Seattle? Are you rooting for the Niners to win and maybe for the Packers to lose? Like, do you want to see San Francisco? Who's your most preferred opponent?
I think it's Packers in the first round, and not just because I think it's an advantageous matchup for us or anything like that. It's just, I just want a little variety, because most likely we're going to play the 49ers or the Rams in the division in the NFC Championship game. And I feel like getting to the playoffs and then having to play them each again.
Right.
I don't know. Can we play somebody else? Maybe.
Right. Can we play not one of the 3 best teams in the conference?
Yeah.
I get that.
It is. Look, I'm all joking aside. It is really, gratifying to be sitting in this position. I've, been pretty outspoken since the beginning of the year that I thought this was kind of the Seahawks 2012 again, that this was the year with all the changes they had on offense. But I thought there were changes that were intentional, and they were very meticulous and thought out with a vision from Mike McDonald, what he wanted his offense to look like. So I thought, okay, this is kind of the transition year for that. I thought we'd be a playoff team. Maybe you win a playoff game. Then you come back next year with all that continuity on offense, and you look for another leap. And now we can talk about being a contender. So to be here a year early, still kind of getting used to it. But you can't, some people like to talk themselves into getting concerned about a week off and maybe you're rusty or whatever, but like you get healthier, they get Charles Cross back, they get Elijah Arroyo back off the injured list. You even just the little bangs and bruises, you get to heal from those. You get to reset yourself mentally. You get to self-scout a little bit this first week and look back on maybe some tendencies that you're putting on tape. And just get ready to go. And I think if you're a Seahawks fan, what you're feeling really good about now is not just the home field advantage, but that it certainly appears and has since about week 5 that home field advantage is back, and that Lumen Field is going to be a really, really tough place to play in January.
You have every reason to feel good about your team and their prospects going forward. By the way, I just saw it cross on Twitter. The Ravens have officially requested permission to interview Robert Saleh. So maybe the scenario we talked about earlier is going to play out. But I think that this could very well be the last game that Robert Saleh coordinates the defense for the 49ers.
I like that idea. I think that would make a lot of sense. And it would make sense for McDaniel to go there too, with a guy he has a working relationship with and a quarterback he can win with. That would be a lot of fun. And Derrick Henry. I mean, Mike McDaniel likes to run the football a little bit. That would be something to see. All right, man. Well, we'll get back together next week. And hopefully for us, hopefully for you, hopefully for Rams fans and everybody else, we'll still have 3 NFC West teams alive in the playoffs. Sorry, Arizona. Your season is over. That's Rob. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, subscribe to his channel. The Gold Standard Network does great work over there. I'm Dan, Seahawks Forever. If you would give us each a subscribe. Before we go, though, almost forgot something. Go ahead, sir.
I think we're both thinking the same thing.
We cannot let you leave without, let me get Rob back in here with me, without thanking our fine sponsors both of our channels, Sleeper. I know the season's winding down, but first of all, they cover all sports. And isn't playoff football the most fun time to pick games anyway? This is the #1 sports app out there for a bunch of reasons. One of the things I like to do with it is follow games that I'm not watching on TV. They have the best real-time play-by-play tracking out there. You can respond to each and every play and even chat with other members in the community out there. And if you like games of skill, this is the app for you. You see that promotion right there? They're going to give you $20 just to get started, just for signing up without even having to make a deposit. But if you do want to make a deposit, they're going to match your first one up to $100, 100%. You have to use a promo code, and we're going to give you a choice. You can either use Forever, in which I'll get credit for the sign up, or you can use Rob's promo code, which is
GSP, baby. Do the right thing.
And that stands, I don't even know what that stands for.
Gold Standard Productions.
Oh, Productions. I'm like, shouldn't that be an N? See, they've already forgotten what it is. So go with Forever. No, look, we're not playing this week, so give Rob the sign up. Let's do that. Terms and conditions do apply, legal currently in 27 states. Check out the Sleeper app today. We got another super chat from Smells Like Foot in here. Thank you for the donation. Name a coach or someone in a front office that you think your respective teams should move on from. Mine is John Lynch. Okay. Rob?
I would not be furious if that happened. I think John Lynch's best service to the 49ers is the fact that he kind of smooths out Kyle Shanahan a little bit. Kyle Shanahan, a lot of the time, is miserable, especially early in the week. He's very like, oh, how are we going to put this game plan together? And he can be a little abrasive at times. And I think John Lynch kind of goes through the building and, smooths it out. Oh, Kyle? Don't worry. He'll come around, that type of thing.
Yeah.
If he were gone, they would need someone to do that. But also, the 49ers draft history has as much bad as it does good. And recently, it's been very hit or miss. So a change in that might not be the worst thing.
Do you expect them to be aggressive doing some big game hunting this offseason? You mentioned Trey Hendrickson's name. That seems like an obvious fit for me. I don't think there's much of a free agent class when it comes to offensive linemen this year. But do you expect them to be pretty aggressive now that they've kind of got the dead cap money behind them?
I do. And I don't know if you happen to see, I just put out a video on my channel yesterday because Nick Wagner of ESPN said, keep an eye on Justin Jefferson potentially going to the 49ers or that being aggressive. They've tried to trade for him once already. They desperately need wide receiver help. I think Kyle Shanahan recognizes what he doesn't have on his roster. And so he threw out Justin Jefferson. We know things in Minnesota this year were a little rocky. But when the Niners think they have a chance, they are aggressive. They go all in. So I think Max Crosby is on the table, Trey Hendrickson, Justin Jefferson, apparently. It could be a very interesting offseason in San Francisco.
Seems like George Pickens would be a good fit there too, but although it seems like he's been a good soldier in Dallas, but the stuff they went through with Brandon Ayuk, you think that might give him pause a little bit before taking on a guy with a big personality?
I do, especially because Ayuk wasn't that guy. He was very much a quiet, kind of take care of your business type of thing, and then he eventually became that. I don't know that the 49ers want to get into the business of paying a personality who is already shown that sometimes he doesn't have his head totally in the game. Who knows how that person's going to react if they get a bunch of money. I don't know that that's a game the Niners want to play.
Ryan Jones asked, why would they trade Justin Jefferson? Well, they went all in this last year and I think they spent more free agent money than anybody else in the league over the offseason. And they've got some, even with the rookie quarterback contract, they got some things to fix on that roster. And so the boatload of picks that he would bring back would certainly be attractive.
And he may want out. Like he may demand a trade.
That could be. Yeah. He may not want to live through the development curve of a young quarterback. Although it sounds like they're going to go out and get another guy this offseason as a fallback at least, or maybe a bridge. Alec Pierce, interesting, sneaky good free agent wide receiver that some people think is going to get paid big time money for a guy that doesn't really get a lot of national attention.
Agreed.
Ryan Jones just says flat out, Pickens is crazy.
Sometimes wide receivers be crazy.
Ryan Jones says Trey Hendrickson, an older injured player. Well, he was injured this last year, but he's been pretty durable throughout his career, and just a guy that he still has that one elite trait. He can get after the passer, and he's not. I think he gets unfairly maligned for his run defense. He's fine.
And he only costs you money. You don't have to trade for him. He's a free agent.
Exactly. And you're probably not going to pay Myles Garrett money because he's 32 years old. All right, guys, we got to wrap this up. Rob, always good to see you. Enjoy this wild card weekend. I'm going to enjoy a stress-free wild card weekend, and we will be back here again on the NFC West Mixtape. Sorry, I'm all tongue-tied today. Don't know what it is. But thanks, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll see you back here next week on both of our channels, Seahawks Forever and the Gold Standard Network. See you next time.